Media fact checker. Northern Territory Supreme Court trial of two men accused of rape after picking up intoxicated woman for Uber. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Panormitis Charalampis and Michael Vruvis were charged with 4 counts each of sexual intercourse without consent in the Northern Territory Supreme Court. The incident occurred on January 14, 2024, when the men picked up a woman waiting for an Uber outside Darwin nightclub Mayberry at approximately 3:30 a.m. CCTV footage shows the woman leaving Mayberry at 3:30 a.m. and being picked up by the men, who she believed were her Uber drivers. The woman was in her 20s at the time and her alcohol level was estimated between 0.2 and 0.1 when she arrived at her apartment with the men. The men were acquitted on all charges after nearly 7 hours of jury deliberation. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the woman was crawling and falling out of a car, laying on the ground, unable to walk without being carried by 2 men, but Article 2 omits this specific description. Article 1 reports the woman said, "I don't know how long that lasted, it just felt like it kept going about the sexual encounters," while Article 2 characterizes it as elaborate and extensive without direct quote. Article 1 describes the defense arguing the woman formed a false reality about the night, while Article 2 does not mention this phrasing but focuses on regretted the night. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Perth man accused of attempted terror attack at Invasion Day rally pleads mental health defence. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Liam Alexander Hall, a 32-year-old man, is accused of attempting to bomb an Invasion Day rally in Perth on January 26, 2026, by throwing a homemade fragment bomb filled with ball bearings and nails, or screws, into a crowd of about 2,500 people. Hall is charged with engaging in a terrorist act, making or possessing explosives under suspicious circumstances, and 1 count of intent to harm or doing an act which could endanger life, health, or safety. Hall's lawyer, Simon Freitag, has foreshadowed a potential not guilty by reason of insanity plea under Section 27 of the Criminal Code Act, which requires a mental disease or illness rendering the accused incapable of understanding or controlling their actions. Hall is currently detained at Western Australia's Franklin Centre at Greylands Hospital in Perth's western suburbs, a facility for mentally unwell prisoners and those facing criminal charges. The device allegedly did not detonate, and no injuries were reported despite the incident being described as a potential mass casualty event. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC described the device as containing ball bearings and nail screws, while Newscomer specifically mentions it was encased in an Elsa-themed sock from Frozen. The Guardian states Hall's condition has shown some improvement, while no such detail is mentioned in ABC or Newscomer. The Guardian reports the case is expected to progress to Perth Supreme Court, but ABC and Newscomer do not mention this detail. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Fungal outbreak at Sydney Hospital linked to construction-related mould exposure. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 6 transplant patients in Ward 9E at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital were diagnosed with aspergillosis mould infection in November and December 2025. 2 patients died directly from the aspergillosis infection, and a 3rd infected patient later died from multi-organ failure due to sepsis, not the fungal infection. A hospital balcony near ongoing construction works was identified as the probable source of the fungal spores, with airborne spores linked to construction activities. The outbreak was investigated by senior transplant specialists and the report was handed to NSW Chief Health Officer Kerry Chant. NSW Health announced reforms including increased air sampling and a fungal surveillance committee after the report. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the 3rd infected patient died from multi-organ failure due to sepsis associated with a skin condition, while Newscomer does not mention the cause of death for the 3rd patient. ABC specifies the patient in ICU had disseminated aspergillosis and spent 150 days in hospital prior to infection, but Newscomau does not provide this level of detail. ABC mentions the report was conducted by senior doctors specializing in transplants and handed to Chief Health Officer Kerry Chant, but Newscomau does not reference this process. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker: travel expenses and affordability of Albania compared to other European destinations. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Albania is described as Europe's most affordable destination for summer travel by the author in both Thege and SMH articles. The author spent a week in Albania during late northern summer with exchange rates of $1 equals 55 cents and 54 Albanian lek, later updated to 60 cents and 57 lek, in both Thege and SMH. The author visited Tirana, Vlorë, Gjirokastër, and Sarand during the trip in both Thege and SMH. The Tirana Marriott Hotel is centrally located within a football field in Tirana, mentioned in both Thege and SMH. The author paid €1.55 for a coffee in Tirana, equivalent to $3, in both Thege and SMH. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker: Israeli death penalty law for Palestinians sparks UN and international condemnation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Israeli Knesset passed a law on Monday allowing the death penalty for Palestinians in the occupied West Bank convicted of deadly terror attacks by military courts, with executions to occur within 90 days of sentencing. The law does not apply to Jewish extremists accused of similar crimes, creating a discriminatory two-tiered justice system. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk stated the law is patently inconsistent with Israel's international law obligations and that its application in the occupied Palestinian territory would constitute a war crime. The legislation makes the death penalty the default punishment for Palestinians in the West Bank found guilty of intentionally carrying out deadly attacks deemed acts of terrorism by a military court. Israel has rarely used the death penalty, with the last execution being Adolf Eichmann in 1962. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions the law was passed on Monday with amendments by a security committee, while ABC does not specify the exact timing of amendments or confirm the day of passage. The Guardian states the law allows courts to impose the death penalty without a prosecutor's request, but ABC does not mention this detail. The Guardian highlights that the defense minister can submit an opinion in death penalty cases, which ABC does not reference. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker: Paul McCartney announces and reviews his 18th solo album, The Boys of Dungeon Lane. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Paul McCartney is 83 years old. The album title is The Boys of Dungeon Lane, referencing Dungeon Lane in Speke, Liverpool, where McCartney spent his childhood. The album was produced by Andrew Watt. The lead single is titled Days We Left Behind and references Dungeon Lane. McCartney debuted Days We Left Behind on BBC Radio Merseyside in 2023. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 does not mention the album's focus on McCartney's third wife Nancy Shevell, while Article 2 explicitly states this. Article 1 does not reference the album's inspiration from Danny Boyle's Yesterday, while Article 2 explicitly mentions it. Article 1 does not mention the album's inclusion of love songs about Nancy Shevell, while Article 2 highlights this aspect. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker: Melbourne couple charged with slavery and abuse of Indonesian woman. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chi Kit Max Chong and Angie Ye-Ling Lau are facing trial in Victoria's County Court for slavery-related offences, both pleading not guilty. The alleged victim was a 61-year-old Indonesian woman who lived with the couple in their Point Cook, Melbourne home from January 2022 until she ran away in October 2022. The woman was allegedly subjected to beatings, restrictions on food, sleep, and movement, and forced to perform domestic labour including cooking, cleaning, and massaging Chong's legs. Chong allegedly told the woman she could leave only if she paid $1 million, otherwise she had to stay. The woman presented to St. Vincent's Hospital in October 2022 with injuries including a swollen ear, laceration to the foot, leg swelling, and malnutrition indicators. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau reports the woman was allegedly told she could leave if she paid $1 million, while ABC does not mention this specific demand. News Kamau states the woman was allegedly forced to work off a supposed debts related to Chong's work credit card, but ABC does not explicitly mention this debt narrative. News Kamau reports the woman was allegedly accused of causing an issue around Chong's work credit card, while ABC does not include this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland Rail industrial action disrupts passenger services ahead of major track works. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. No trains will operate between Darra and Rosewood on the Ipswich line on April 1, 2024, due to industrial action. No trains will operate between Central and Cleveland on April 1, 2024, due to industrial action. Queensland Rail advised customers to make alternative travel arrangements for the affected lines on April 1. Rail, Tram and Bus Union, RTBU, Queensland members took 24-hour industrial action starting at 12 a.m. on April 1, 2024. The industrial action was described as low impact and intended to target coal and mineral trains, not passenger services. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC says Queensland Rail told workers they would not be paid if not performing full duties, but does not state this as a directive to avoid work. News Kamau implies this is part of the government's heavy-handed response. ABC states Queensland Rail did not tell workers not to attend work, while RTBU, in News Kamau, claims members were locked out after refusing partial duties. News Kamau says hundreds of RTBU members walked off the job, while ABC does not specify a number but focuses on train control members taking action. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Angus Taylor's car theft and related political events during fuel crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Angus Taylor's car was stolen on March 27 from an address in Canberra's inner south. The stolen vehicle was located later that day in Turner, a North Canberra suburb. ACT policing confirmed the theft and took the car for forensic examination. The incident occurred just hours before Taylor's planned joint press conference with Matt Canavan and Bridget McKenzie at a petrol station. Taylor's office declined to comment on the car theft. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH suggests Taylor's shirtless appearance was due to the car theft, while News Kamau does not mention this detail or speculate on his attire. SMH implies the car theft was the primary reason for the lack of jackets, framing it as a coincidence, whereas News Kamau does not address the attire context. SMH reports the car probably couldn't have travelled much further due to low fuel, but News Kamau does not confirm or deny this assessment. This story was covered by news.com.au and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Iran's control of Strait of Hormuz shipping during US-Israel war on Iran. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Iran has reduced daily ship traffic through the Strait of Hormuz by about 95% since February 28, from a pre-war average of 138 vessels day to roughly 5 to 6 large vessels day, ABC, or fewer than 40 vessels exiting in March, Guardian. Iran is enforcing a selective closure or toll booth regime, directing vessels through a northern corridor near Iranian waters, Larak Island, for verification, with at least 2 ships reportedly paying $2 million each for passage, ABC, Guardian. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, controls the strait, with Alireza Tangsiri, IRGC Navy head, reportedly overseeing the closure before his March 22 killing by Israel, Guardian. Iran's crude oil exports remain relatively stable at 1.6 million barrels a day, March 1 to 23, despite the blockade, benefiting from higher oil prices and U.S. sanctions relief, ABC. Over 20 ships have been attacked or near-missed since the war began, including the Palau-flagged Skylight tanker, March 1, killing 2 Indian crew members, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Iran's toll fee is $2 million per ship, while Guardian does not specify a fee amount but confirms at least 2 payments were made, one reportedly $2 million. ABC states 5-6 large vessels transit daily, while Guardian's data shows fewer than 40 vessels exited the entire month of March, 100 exited, 40 entered. ABC claims India has no blanket arrangement for Indian-flagged ships, but Guardian does not address this specific diplomatic stance. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Zac Lomax's Rugby Union Super Rugby Pacific debut with Western Force against Queensland Reds. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Zac Lomax will make his Super Rugby Pacific debut this weekend, Saturday, for the Western Force against the Queensland Reds at Brisbane's Lang Park, kick-off at 7:35 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Lomax is named on the bench for the Western Force in their Round 8 clash against the Queensland Reds. Lomax is a 26-year-old former NRL star who played for NSW in the 2025 State of Origin opener, scored 2 tries, and the 2024 decider, kicked 3 goals. Lomax's most recent match at Lang Park was in July 2024, when he scored 2 tries for the Parramatta Eels against Brisbane Broncos, underdog win. The Queensland Reds sit 4th on the Super Rugby Pacific ladder with 4 wins from 6 matches played. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the 2 sources. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Teenage assault on paramedic after stolen car crash in Melbourne. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A stolen Mazda 3 collided with a Volkswagen Jetta at Nicholson St and Victoria Parade, Carlton, just before 6 a.m. on Saturday. 4 teenage males were travelling in the stolen Mazda 3, which was stolen from Mulgrave on March 21. 2 boys fled the crash scene immediately after the collision. A 19-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy were injured in the crash and taken to hospital by ambulance. A 66-year-old man and a 76-year-old woman from Terang were in the Volkswagen and taken to hospital as a precaution. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the 19-year-old assaulted the paramedic, while ABC states the 15-year-old assaulted the paramedic. News Kamau refers to 3 other people in the stolen car, while ABC specifies 4 teenage males. News Kamau does not specify injury severity for the 19-year-old, while ABC describes the 19-year-old as seriously injured. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Global oil market disruption causes Australian fuel crisis and economic strain. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Fuel prices in Australia reached an average of $2.38 per litre for regular unleaded in the week ending March 20, up 27% since the war began on February 28, ABC Article 3, Guardian Article 2. Diesel prices passed $3 per litre in nearly every capital city, ABC Article 3. The US-Israel war on Iran disrupted key shipping routes, causing global oil market prices to surge, Guardian Article 2, ABC Article 1. Petrol stations in Australia have run out of fuel due to supply shortages, Guardian Article 2, ABC Article 3. The Strait of Hormuz closure reduced global oil trade by 20%, ABC Article 3, Guardian Article 2. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC Article 1 states fuel prices reached $2.38 per litre in March 2026, while Guardian Article 2 implies the crisis began in early 2026 but does not specify exact dates for price peaks. ABC Article 3 reports diesel prices passed $3 per litre in nearly every capital city, while Guardian Article 2 does not provide a similar nationwide diesel price figure. ABC Article 1 mentions a 45-minute drive for Wimarin, Sydney to Blacktown, but Guardian Article 2 does not reference this specific commute or location. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 3 men charged in Sydney gym daylight shooting incident December 2025. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 3 men aged 40, 32, and 38 were charged over a shooting outside a gym in Gregory Hills, Sydney's southwest, on December 5, 2025. A 48-year-old man was allegedly fired upon with 12 rounds outside the gym at Steer Road, Gregory Hills, at 8:30 a.m. on December 5, 2025. The alleged victim escaped uninjured and the shooters fled in a red Range Rover SUV with cloned number plates. Police found the SUV abandoned in bushland near Macquarie Grove Road, Cobbitty, along with clothing, masks, cloned plates, and 2 pistols. A 40-year-old man was arrested in Parramatta on Monday and charged with shoot at with intent to murder and knowingly directing a criminal group. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran war escalation with Trump's threats and diplomatic deadlock. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump threatened to obliterate Iran's electric generating plants, oil wells, and Karg Island if a ceasefire deal is not reached by April 6, Guardian, ABC, News.com.au. Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghaei stated US peace proposals were excessive, unrealistic, and irrational, Guardian, ABC. Iran received a 15-point proposal from the US via intermediaries after talks between Pakistan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey's foreign ministers, Guardian, ABC. Israel and the US launched strikes on Iran, including targets in Tehran and infrastructure used by Iran-backed Hezbollah in Beirut, Guardian, ABC. Thousands of US troops, including 2,500 Marines, have arrived in the Middle East, with additional forces building capacity for potential future operations, ABC, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Trump's April 6 deadline for a ceasefire, while News.com.au only states Trump extended the deadline without specifying the new date. The Guardian mentions Trump's proposal to ask Arab countries to fund the war, but ABC does not reference this detail. The Guardian reports Iran's parliamentary speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf dismissed talks in Islamabad as a cover for US troop increases, but ABC does not mention this. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Tropical Cyclone Narelle devastates Western Australia's Pilbara and Gascoyne regions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Cyclone Narelle made landfall in Western Australia as a Category 4 system on March 28, 2026, after crossing Queensland and the Northern Territory. Exmouth, a tourist town 1,250 kilometres north of Perth, suffered severe damage with roofs torn off, power and water outages, and the airport obliterated by winds exceeding 250 kilometres per hour. Cyclone Narelle caused widespread flooding in the Lyons and Gascoyne River catchments, with water levels rising in Exmouth and Onslow due to rainfall totals of up to 100 millimetres. Chevron's Gorgon and Wheatstone LNG facilities experienced outages due to Cyclone Narelle, with production suspended at Wheatstone and one train halted at Gorgon. The cyclone disrupted power supplies to Exmouth and Carnarvon, leaving around 2,000 homes without electricity as of March 28 to 29, 2026. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Article 1, states Cyclone Narelle weakened to a subtropical low after ripping through WA, while ABC, Article 4, reports it was downgraded to a tropical low as it tracked along the coast. ABC, Article 10, reports that Cyclone Narelle was downgraded to a Category 2 system by the time it approached Carnarvon, but The Guardian, Article 1, states it was downgraded to a Category 3 system near Jailton and Jailton again before weakening to a tropical low. ABC, Article 11, mentions that Cyclone Narelle was forecast to make landfall as a severe Category 3 cyclone near Shark Bay, while The Guardian, Article 12, states it was expected to make landfall as a Category 3 system between Coral Bay and Cape Cuvier near Carnarvon. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia faces inflation surge and economic risks due to Middle East war oil shocks. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Fuel prices in Australia have risen by about 40% since the US-led war in the Middle East began on February 28, 2024, effectively closing the Strait of Hormuz and disrupting 20% of global oil trade. Diesel prices in nearly every Australian capital city have passed $3 per litre as of recent reporting. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, has raised interest rates twice in 2024, with the cash rate now at 4.1%, and economists predict further hikes, including a potential increase to 4.6% this year. Official inflation in Australia is currently at 3.7%, with forecasts predicting it will spike to 4.3% in the March 2024 quarter and above 5% in the June 2024 period. AMP economists estimate a 30% chance of a recession in Australia within the next 12 months due to rising fuel costs and interest rates. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Uber's fare increase is framed as part of ongoing driver earnings support without explicitly calling it a fuel surcharge, while The Guardian does not mention Uber's framing but focuses on widespread industry surcharges. ABC cites AMP's Diana Musina warning of excuseflation and potential price gouging, but The Guardian does not reference this specific concern. ABC mentions Professor Bob Gregory's explicit belief that Australia is almost certainly headed for stagflation, while The Guardian does not quote Gregory but discusses stagflationary risks more generally. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. National Film and Sound Archives 2026 Sounds of Australia Collection Editions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jack Colson's 1991 arrest speech. Gentlemen, this is democracy manifest. What is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal was added to the NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection in 2026. The NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection includes 9 audio recordings added in 2026, including Jack Colson's speech, the PB5 pedestrian crossing button sound, and Missy Higgins's 2004 hit Scar. The collection was launched in 2007 and is designed to reflect life in Australia through culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant sounds. Public nominations are considered by a panel of NFSA sound experts, who select recordings over 10 years old for inclusion. The NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection now contains over 200 recordings after the 2026 edition. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection was launched in 2007, while The Guardian does not specify the launch year but implies it has been ongoing for nearly 2 decades. The Guardian mentions that the NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection includes recordings from 1896 to 2015, but ABC does not mention the earliest year explicitly. ABC states that the NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection includes the 2007 native title determination at Noonkamba Station as a radio broadcast on ABC Kimberley, while The Guardian does not specify the broadcast source. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Sydney grandfather's mistaken identity kidnapping and murder investigation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Declan James Donnelly, 23, was arrested on March 6 at a Seven Hills home and charged with murder and kidnapping of Chris Bagsarian, an 85-year-old grandfather abducted from North Ryde on February 13. Bagsarian's body was found near a golf course in Pitt Town, Sydney's northwest, on February 24, after being allegedly tortured and killed in a case of mistaken identity. Donnelly was found wearing only his underwear during the arrest, and an sawn-off shotgun, ammunition, and prohibited drugs, heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, cannabis, were seized at the Seven Hills property. Gerard Andrews, 29, and Daniel Stevens, 24, were charged in February with Bagsarian's kidnapping and murder, and remain in custody without entering pleas. Janice Thurston, 23, Donnelly's girlfriend, was arrested alongside him and sentenced to 10 months imprisonment, non-parole period of 6 months, for an apprehended violence order breach and a prior police assault charge. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states Donnelly allegedly murdered Bagsarian between February 13 morning and February 14 at 9 p.m., while SMH does not specify a timeframe for the murder beyond shortly after the wrongful abduction was revealed. SMH claims Donnelly was contracted to kidnap Dimitri Stepanyan's father, a relative of Dimitri Stepanyan, but News Kamau does not mention Dimitri Stepanyan or the Alamdine crime family connection. News Kamau lists 3 counts of supply prohibited drug as a charge against Donnelly, while SMH and ABC do not specify this exact charge breakdown. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. German TV star Collien Fernandes accuses ex-husband Christian Ulmen of AI porn and digital abuse, sparking national debate. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Collien Fernandes and Christian Ulmen were a high-profile German celebrity couple married since 2011, with a daughter, who separated in 2023-2024. Fernandes accused Ulmen in a Der Spiegel interview, 2024, of creating fake social media profiles in her name, distributing sexualized images, videos, and subjecting her to digital violence. Ulmen denies the allegations and has threatened legal action against Der Spiegel for inadmissible coverage. Fernandes filed a legal complaint against Ulmen in Spain in 2023-2024 due to stronger legal protections for digital gender-based violence there. Fernandes has been publicly discussing digital violence for years, including a 2024 TV documentary on non-consensual pornographic content attributed to her. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Fernandes claims Ulmen confessed to her after her documentary aired, while Article 2 does not mention this confession detail. Article 1 describes the abuse as primarily identity abuse, fake profiles, impersonation, rather than AI deepfakes, whereas Article 2 frames it as AI-generated pornographic images. Article 1 quotes Ulmen's lawyer denying creation distribution of deepfakes explicitly. None of these were created or distributed by him, but Article 2 does not include this precise denial. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Fair Work Commission abolishes discounted pay rates for young Australian workers aged 18 to 20 in retail, fast food, and pharmacies. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Fair Work Commission abolished junior pay rates for workers aged 18 to 20 in retail, fast food, and pharmacy sectors. Around 500,000 workers are estimated to be eligible for the pay rise, according to ABS data. Junior pay rates previously paid 18-year-olds 70% of the award rate, 19-year-olds 80%, and 20-year-olds 90%. The changes apply to the General Retail Industry Award, Fast Food Industry Award, and Pharmacy Industry Award. The wage adjustments will be phased in over up to 4 years, with the first changes starting in December 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between sources. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's 2026 private health insurance premium hikes and cost of living impact. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Private health insurance premiums in Australia will rise by an industry average of 4.41% from April 1, 2026, marking the largest increase in nearly a decade. For-profit insurers like AIA Health Insurance, 5.98%, NIB, 5.47%, Medibank, 5.1%, and Bupa, 4.8%, are leading the increases, while not-for-profit funds such as GMHBA are raising rates by 1.98%. Gold-tier hospital cover premiums will increase by an average of 13.3%, with HCF's Hospital Optimal Gold cover rising by 25%, adding roughly $167 per year for singles and $330 per year for families. The Reserve Bank of Australia raised the cash rate to 4.1% in March 2026, contributing to elevated mortgage repayments and broader cost of living pressures. Insurers attribute premium hikes to rising hospital wages, more expensive medical technology, an aging population, and increased demand for mental health and chronic disease services post-pandemic. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the 4.41% average increase is the largest in around 10 years, while Article 2 does not specify the exact time frame for the last significant hike. Article 1 mentions some customers facing even steeper jumps beyond the 13.3% gold tier average, but Article 2 only cites HCF's 25% increase explicitly without additional examples. Article 1 highlights record low rental vacancy rates contributing to housing pressure, while Article 2 does not mention rental markets or vacancy rates. This story was covered by news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. First NFL regular season game in Australia at MCG on September 11th. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The first NFL regular season game in Australia will be played at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, MCG, on Friday, September 11, 2025, with kick-off at 10:35 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. The match is between the San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams. General admission tickets start at $140, with standing room tickets priced at $95. Partner pre-sales for tickets begin on Wednesday, April 1, 2025, at 9 a.m., and general admission tickets open on Wednesday, April 8, 2025, at 10 a.m. via Ticketmaster. The NFL established an academy on the Gold Coast in 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 and Article 3 state the game is on September 11th, but Article 3, News Kamau, incorrectly mentions September 10th in the headline. Article 1 mentions the game was originally expected in October but moved to September 11th, while Article 2 does not mention this shift in timing. Article 1 and Article 3 mention the game is the first of up to 3 NFL games in Victoria, but Article 2 does not mention this future expansion. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. F1 safety crisis after Oliver Bearman's high-speed crash at Japanese GP due to new energy regulations. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Oliver Bearman crashed at the Japanese Grand Prix, Suzuka, after evading Franco Colapinto's Alpine at 307 km/h, 191 miles per hour, with a closing speed of 50 km/h, reported in Guardian articles 1 and 2 and ABC. Bearman suffered a 50G impact with the barriers and emerged with only bruising, Guardian articles 1 and 2 and ABC. The crash occurred due to Bearman using boost mode, electrical energy deployment, while Colapinto was recovering energy, creating a speed differential, Guardian articles 1 and 2. The FIA has confirmed it will review the new regulations before the Miami GP in 5 weeks, Guardian articles 1 and 2. Kimi Antonelli won the Japanese Grand Prix, becoming the youngest driver to lead the F1 championship, Guardian articles 1 and 2 and ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian article 1 states Bearman was travelling at 307 km/h, 191 miles per hour, when he veered off, while ABC does not specify Bearman's speed but confirms the closing speed was alarming. Guardian article 2 mentions Bearman's speed as 190 miles per hour, not 307 km/h, while Guardian article 1 states 307 km/h, 191 miles per hour, for Bearman's speed before the swerve. ABC does not mention the FIA's explicit statement about reviewing regulations before Miami, only that F1 may need to have a serious look. Guardian articles 1 and 2 confirm scheduled meetings. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. TT Line ferry price surcharge due to fuel cost increases. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. TT Line announced a 15% fuel surcharge on new Spirit of Tasmania ferry tickets effective immediately, both sources. The surcharge applies to passengers travelling between Victoria and Tasmania, both sources. TT Line chairman Ken Konofsky stated fuel prices increased by 80%, both sources. The company projects $50 million in additional costs due to fuel price hikes, both sources. Existing bookings are not affected by the surcharge, both sources. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC mentions the surcharge could remain at some level even after fuel prices drop, but Newscom Australia does not explicitly state this possibility. ABC reports the surcharge could cost a family of 2 with a caravan up to $228 extra, while Newscom Australia states the same booking costs $228 each way, no directionality specified. ABC highlights TT Line's insolvency declaration by Tasmania's Auditor-General last year, but Newscom Australia does not mention this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Saudi Arabia's push for US to escalate military campaign against Iran amid regional war. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, urged Donald Trump not to cut short the US-Israeli war on Iran, calling it a historic opportunity to remake the Middle East, both articles, Guardian. A Saudi intelligence source confirmed MBS's role in urging the US to intensify attacks on Iran, both articles, Guardian. Trump publicly confirmed MBS's warrior status and alignment with US, stating "Yeah, he's fighting with us," both articles, Guardian. Saudi Arabia has not yet joined the war militarily but is considering direct involvement if peace efforts fail, both articles, Guardian. Iran launched a drone attack on Saudi Arabia's Yanbu oil refinery on the Red Sea coast, both articles, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 does not mention Saudi Arabia's 2023 detente with Iran brokered by China, while Article 2 explicitly states this as context for Saudi caution. Article 1 omits the UAE ambassador's Wall Street Journal op-ed demanding Iran's conclusive military defeat, which Article 2 includes. Article 1 does not reference Saudi Arabia's Red Sea pipeline vulnerability to Houthi-Iran collaboration, which Article 2 highlights as a potential escalation trigger. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's fuel stockpile and potential rationing amid Middle East conflict disruptions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia currently holds 30 days worth of diesel, 39 days of petrol, and 30 days of jet fuel in reserve, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. All fuel shipments to Australia are secured through May 2024, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. Preliminary government modelling from mid-March assumed rationing would begin if fuel stockpiles dropped to 10 days, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. Voluntary fuel consumption measures would activate if stockpiles fell to 15 days, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. The federal government has passed legislation to underwrite future fuel shipments, covering price gaps for importers, ABC Article 1. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the government has passed legislation to underwrite future fuel shipments and will also support fertilizer imports, while Article 2 does not mention fertilizer support in its summary of government actions. Article 1 quotes Tony Wood saying modelling is not about setting a precise date for rationing, but Article 2 does not include this specific quote or emphasis on the government's reluctance to set a precise trigger. Article 1 mentions Queensland Treasurer David Janetsky's criticism of the federal government's GST plan, but Article 2 does not reference this state-level disagreement. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump criticises Australia and NATO allies over Iran war support. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump called Australia's response to the US-Israel war on Iran not great and said he was surprised by Australia's lack of involvement during a White House press conference on February 29, 2024. Australia has provided defensive support to the UAE, including a surveillance aircraft and missiles, as confirmed by Defence Minister Richard Marles and Environment Minister Murray Watt. Trump criticised UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer for offering to send aircraft carriers when the war is over, and dismissed them as toys compared to US carriers. Trump stated that NATO countries spent trillions protecting Europe but were not supportive of the US in the Iran conflict, calling it a Little League war. Trump previously criticised Australia and allies for refusing to assist in securing the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has closed amid the conflict. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC report Trump's claim that Iran offered 8 boats of oil as a gesture of goodwill, but Iran has not confirmed this offer in any of the articles. The Guardian states Trump described Starmer as a lovely man before criticising him, while ABC and News Corp Australia do not mention this detail. ABC reports Trump's criticism occurred during a lengthy cabinet meeting, whereas The Guardian and News Corp Australia describe it as a press conference. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Daly Cherry-Evans returned to Manly Warringah as a Rooster vs Manly Sea Eagles NRL match. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Daly Cherry-Evans made his first appearance for the Roosters at Brookvale Oval after leaving Manly Warringah in the off-season. Manly Warringah lost to the Roosters 33-16 in their first game of the 2026 NRL season. Cherry-Evans was booed by Manly fans during warm-ups, team introductions, and throughout the game. The match took place despite a storm causing power cuts and heavy rain just before kickoff. Cherry-Evans played a controlled, steady game for the Roosters, with no major errors or standout moments. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 and 3 both state Manly lost 33-16, but the live blog, Article 2, does not explicitly state the final score in its text. Article 1 and 3 describe Cherry-Evans' performance as tidy and controlled, but the live blog does not provide a detailed post-game analysis of his performance. Article 1 and 3 mention Cherry-Evans completing 22 20-second passes, but the live blog does not explicitly state this statistic in its text. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US allows Russian oil tanker to deliver crude to Cuba amid blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Russian oil tanker Anatoly Kolodkin is carrying approximately 650,000 to 730,000 barrels of oil, 650,000 per Guardian, 730,000 per ABC, and is en route to Cuba's Matanzas port. The vessel is sanctioned by the US, EU, and UK due to Russia's involvement in the Ukraine war. Cuba has faced a US oil blockade, leading to severe shortages of gasoline and electricity, with blackouts and rationing reported since at least 3 months, Guardian, or years, ABC. US President Donald Trump stated he has no problem with the Russian tanker delivering oil to Cuba, emphasizing humanitarian relief over geopolitical implications. The Anatoly Kolodkin was last tracked near Cuba's eastern tip per ABC, eastern tip per Guardian, and expected to arrive by Tuesday local time, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the tanker carries 730,000 barrels of oil, while The Guardian reports 650,000 barrels. ABC claims the oil is enough for Cuba's daily diesel demand for 9 or 10 days, 180,000 barrels, but The Guardian does not provide this specific calculation. The Guardian mentions the US temporarily lifted sanctions on Russia to improve oil flow due to US-Israeli strikes on Iran, a detail not referenced in ABC. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Former AFL player Nick Stevens convicted of fraud in pool installation scheme. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nick Stevens was found guilty on 12 counts of obtaining a financial advantage by deception and 1 charge of using a false document in the County Court of Victoria, May 2024. Stevens was acquitted on 1 charge of obtaining a financial advantage by deception relating to the first victim's part payment. 6 families in Mildura, Victoria, were defrauded of a total of $170,000 to $171,000 for pools they never received or had illegally installed. Stevens, a former Carlton and Port Adelaide AFL player, 1998 to 2009, ran a landscaping business and had a dealership agreement with leisure pools. Mildura Rural City Council issued stop work orders on Stevens' pool projects due to lack of building permits, with the first order in May 2017. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Stevens had outstanding debts to leisure pools and a transport company by early 2018, but News Kamau does not mention the transport company debt. ABC reports Stevens' defense argued he tried to fix the pools rather than absconding, while News Kamau focuses on his claim of financial difficulty and permit delays as excuses. News Kamau describes Stevens as showing little reaction to the verdicts, but ABC does not mention his emotional response. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Sydney private school teacher charged with grooming and child abuse material offences. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Benjamin David Collien, 29, is a casual music teacher at Newington College, Sydney, who was arrested on March 28, 2024, for allegedly grooming a 14-year-old girl and accessing child abuse material. Collien allegedly posed as a 17-year-old boy on social media to contact the vulnerable 14-year-old girl, who was using an app affected by Australia's under-16 social media ban. Collien was arrested at his Beecroft, Sydney, residence, where police allegedly found child abuse material on an electronic device during a search. Collien was charged with using a carriage service to groom someone under 16 and using a carriage service to access child abuse material. Newington College terminated Collien's employment after his arrest, with headmaster Michael Parker confirming no Newington students were involved in the alleged incident. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH states Collien allegedly offered a not significant amount of money, while ABC omits this specific phrasing and focuses on the exchange dynamic without quantifying the amount. SMH mentions Collien's arrest occurred at 5:45 a.m. today, implying March 28, 2024, but ABC does not specify the exact time of arrest. SMH includes Collien's former student status at Newington College, graduated 2014, which is not mentioned in ABC. This story was covered by ABC News and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. King Charles III state visit to the US amid Iran war tensions and political backlash. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. King Charles III and Queen Camilla will visit the US as a state visit between April the 27th and 30th, 2025, per both sources. The visit is the first by a British monarch to the US in nearly 20 years, following Queen Elizabeth II's 2007 trip, per both sources. King Charles is expected to address the US Congress during the visit, per both sources. Donald Trump confirmed the visit on Truth Social, stating he greatly respects the king and looks forward to meeting him, per both sources. France, Spain, and Italy have restricted US military airspace or denied landing rights for US warplanes over Iran war operations, per both sources. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Trump called UK aircraft carriers toys and unwanted last week, but The Guardian does not quote this exact criticism. ABC reports Trump's Truth Social post urging the UK to go and get their own oil from the Strait of Hormuz, while The Guardian only mentions contempt without this specific quote. ABC includes the 250th anniversary of American independence as a key event during the visit, but The Guardian does not mention this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Victorian Liberal pre-selection crisis over Moira Deeming's removal and Dinesh Gourisetty's disqualification due to child sex offender reference. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Moira Deeming lost Liberal pre-selection for the Western Metropolitan Region Upper House seat on Sunday, November 2024, to Dinesh Gourisetty, 26 votes to 39, with Trung Law receiving 3. Dinesh Gourisetty provided a character reference for Kashyap Patel, who pleaded guilty in 2024 to grooming, sexually assaulting, and transmitting indecent communication to a child under 16, County Court, 2024. Patel was sentenced to 9 months imprisonment and a 2-year community correction order in 2024 after pleading guilty to charges related to a 15-year-old victim in 2021. Victorian Liberal leader Jess Wilson stated on Monday, November 2024, that Gourisetty is not welcome on her team after the character reference revelation. Moira Deeming was expelled from the Liberal Parliamentary Party room in 2023 for threatening defamation action against then-leader John Pasutto, who was later ordered to pay her $300,000 in damages and $2.3 million in legal costs. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau and ABC both report Deeming lost pre-selection to Gourisetty, but News Kamau states Gourisetty withdrew his candidacy, while ABC and Guardian report Gourisetty denied withdrawing and claimed pressure to do so. Guardian reports the party president Philip Davis stated Gourisetty advised me this morning he has withdrawn, but Gourisetty's letter to the party executive denies any formal withdrawal and claims he was pushed to consider resigning. ABC and Guardian both report Gourisetty's character reference for Patel was revealed after the pre-selection vote, but News Kamau states the reference emerged after pre-selection. It was revealed without specifying timing. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian aid worker Zomi Frankcom's death in Israeli drone strike and ongoing investigation demands. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Zomi Frankcom, 43, and 6 World Central Kitchen colleagues were killed in an Israeli drone strike on their humanitarian convoy in Gaza on April 1, 2024. Israel's IDF dismissed 2 officers and reprimanded 3 others following an internal investigation into the strike. Former Australian Defence Force Chief Mark Binskin's 2024 report found a significant breakdown in situational awareness and serious failures in IDF procedures, concluding the strike was not knowingly or deliberately directed against the convoy. Binskin's report noted IDF controls failed, leading to errors in decision-making and misidentification, likely compounded by confirmation bias. Israel's ambassador to Australia, Hillel Newman, denied the investigation was shelved and claimed it remains ongoing, though no final conclusions have been reached. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC report Moira Frankcom stating the investigation remains open and stalled, while Israel's Ambassador Newman insists it has not been shelved and is still under review. The Guardian and ABC highlight that Binskin's report explicitly excluded access to drone audio, but Newman claims Binskin had unprecedented access to the investigation. The Guardian quotes Newman dismissing journalist death figures as exaggerated disinformation, while the CPJ, cited in multiple sources, reports at least 86 journalists killed by Israeli forces in Gaza by 2025. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker: Australia's fuel crisis and national cabinet response to Middle East war disruptions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is convening a second national cabinet meeting on Monday, or early April, to coordinate a national response to the fuel crisis, with state and territory leaders attending. ABC, Thij, SMH, Newscamau, ABC_5, ABC_6, ABC_8. As of mid-March to early April, 475 20-plus service stations across Australia are without at least one type of fuel, with regional areas and Sydney particularly affected. ABC_5, ABC_8, Newscamau_3, ABC_7. The Strait of Hormuz closure, due to Iran war, supplies about 20 to 25% of the world's oil, and Asian refineries supplying 80% of Australia's fuel may exhaust crude oil stocks within a month. Thij, ABC_5, Newscamau_3. 6 of 81 scheduled fuel shipments to Australia by mid-May were cancelled earlier in March, but the government has secured replacements, including 6 days' worth of diesel and 5 days' worth of petrol from emergency reserves. Thij, ABC_5, SMH. Energy Minister Chris Bowen announced voluntary measures like working from home, public transport use, and carpooling are being considered as contingency plans, but no mandatory rationing or drastic measures have been implemented yet. Thij, ABC_5, Newscamau_7, ABC_6. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC_6 states the national plan stages are flexible, not fixed, while Newscamau_3 implies the plan is more rigidly structured with clear escalation points based on New Zealand's model. Premier Roger Cook, WA, told ABC_6 that rationing would only be considered in Stage 4, but NSW Premier Chris Minns, Newscamau_7, suggested it could be introduced earlier in Stage 3. Thij and SMH report that Japan's ambassador warned a windfall tax would be a bad surprise, but Newscamau does not mention this specific warning from Suzuki. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker: US-Iran ceasefire negotiations and escalating Middle East conflict amid indirect talks and military threats. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump claims US has offered a 15-point ceasefire plan to Iran via intermediaries, Pakistan, Egypt, Gulf nations, but Iran denies direct negotiations. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi confirmed Iran received the US 15-point proposal through Pakistan but insists message exchanges not equal to negotiations. Pakistan is facilitating talks between the US and Iran, with reports of potential meetings in Islamabad. Article 1, 2, 3. US is deploying ~5000 additional Marines and ~1,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East. Article 1, 2, 3. Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, blocking oil shipments and causing global fuel price spikes. Article 1, 2, 3. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Trump claims Iran is desperate to make a ceasefire deal, while Article 3's Levitt says Iran has not rejected the US 15-point plan, despite Iran's denials. Article 1 reports Iran's initial response called the US plan one-sided and unfair, but Article 3 does not mention this specific response. Article 2 claims Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner held talks with Iranian Parliament Speaker Kalibaf, denied by Kalibaf, while Article 1 does not confirm this but implies indirect talks. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. North Korea's cyber espionage and fraud operation targeting Australian firms via fake IT jobs. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. North Korea's regime uses an army of thousands of undercover operatives posing as remote IT workers to infiltrate Western companies, with a focus on Australia and the US. The operation is estimated to generate $800 million annually for North Korea, according to the United Nations. ASIO, Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, has identified undercover North Korean operatives targeting Australian firms to funnel salaries back to Pyongyang. Major Australian banks, including NAB, have been infiltrated by North Korean agents, with at least one agent discovered and subsequently sacked. The Australian Federal Police's cyber threat teams are assessing intelligence that North Korean agents are already on shore, including a Melbourne University alumnus suspected of acting as a regime intermediary. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. Both articles are nearly identical in content and reporting. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Tropical Cyclone Narelle's rare landfall and iron-rich dust storm causing blood-red skies in Western Australia. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tropical Cyclone Narelle made landfall in Western Australia on Friday, March 27, roughly 900 kilometres north of Perth in the Food Bowl region. The skies over Shark Bay turned an eerie blood red before the cyclone's landfall due to an iron-infused dust storm. Jessica Lingard, Bureau of Meteorology, and Angus Hines, Bureau of Meteorology, attributed the red sky to high winds picking up iron-rich, rust-coloured dust from the Pilbara region. The Pilbara, less than 400 kilometres northeast of Denham, is the centre of Australia's iron ore industry and has dry, iron-rich soils. Cyclone Narelle became the first storm system in over 20 years to make landfall in 3 of Australia's states or territories. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 states the cyclone hit WA roughly 900 kilometres north of Perth, while ABC places Shark Bay about 500 kilometres south of Exmouth. No direct contradiction but differing distance phrasing. No contradictions in core facts. All sources agree on the red sky's cause, timing, and impact. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. UK nurse Lucy Letby's 2015-16 neonatal unit murder convictions and allegations of miscarriage of justice. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Lucy Letby was convicted in 2022 of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 more while working at the Countess of Chester Hospital's neonatal unit between 2015 and 2016. She was sentenced to 15 whole-life prison orders, and the Court of Appeal refused her permission to appeal in 2023. Letby's lawyer Mark MacDonald submitted an application to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, CCRC, in 2024, supported by reports from 27 medical experts, requesting a re-examination of her case. The CCRC is currently reviewing the CCRC application regarding Letby's convictions. Former police detectives Stuart Clifton, Beverley Alit case, and Steve Watts, National Healthcare Death Guidelines, initially believed Letby was guilty but later concluded the case was a miscarriage of justice. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states David Davis said Cheshire Police failed to appoint appropriate medical and statistics experts, while Article 2 claims Cheshire Police strongly refutes all the points made during the adjournment debate and denies any failures. Article 1 quotes Davis calling Letby's case a miscarriage of justice based on expert reviews, but Article 2 portrays critics as spreading misinformation and baseless claims without factual basis. Article 1 reports Davis saying Cheshire Police failed to conduct proper due diligence on expert witnesses, while Article 2 claims Cheshire Police remain confident in the integrity of the investigation and the conduct of the prosecution. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Review of JW Marriott Khao Lak Resort and Spa in Thailand. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The resort is named JW Marriott Khao Lak Resort and Spa. It has 424 rooms and villas in total, including 127 added after a major redevelopment. The resort is located at 4112 Mu 3 Kuk Kark, Takua Pa District, Phang Ngo, Thailand, 82220. Deluxe rooms start at $253 per night. The resort features 6 distinct accommodation wings connected by extensive waterways. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian bishop appointed to senior Vatican role as prefect of dicastery for legislative texts. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Archbishop Anthony Randozzo, 59, from the Catholic Diocese of Broken Bay has been appointed by Pope Leo XIV as prefect of the dicastery for legislative texts. Randozzo will relocate to Rome in approximately 3 months after serving as Bishop of Broken Bay since 2019. The dicastery for legislative texts interprets and ensures correct application of church laws globally for both Latin and Eastern Catholic churches. Randozzo earned qualifications in canon law from the Pontifical Gregorian University and worked at the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith in Rome. Randozzo met Pope Leo XIV in Rome earlier this month, with one source noting he was stranded in Dubai due to the Middle East conflict. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Randozzo will remain in Broken Bay for the next 3 months before relocating, while Newscomau does not specify an exact timeline beyond when he relocates to the Vatican in 3 months. ABC mentions Pope Leo XIV as the Pope appointing Randozzo, but Newscomau does not explicitly state the Pope's name in the headline or body text, only ABC does. ABC notes Randozzo was stranded in Dubai due to the Middle East conflict, but Newscomau does not mention this detail, only ABC does. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Legal battle between Kyle Sandilands, Jackie Henderson, and ARN Media over contract terminations. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kyle Sandilands and Jackie Henderson were co-hosts of the Kyle and Jackie O Show on Keys 1065 Sydney, owned by ARN Media's subsidiary CBC. Sandilands and Henderson had a 10-year contract, 2023 to 2034, worth $100 million combined, $10 million per year each. ARN terminated Sandilands' contract on March 3, 2024, after an on-air argument with Henderson on February 20, 2024, citing serious misconduct and a failure to remedy the situation within 14 days. Sandilands filed a wrongful termination claim in federal court on March 20, seeking reinstatement and unpaid wages, $85 million remaining. Henderson filed a separate $82.25 million wrongful termination claim against ARN on March 23, alleging adverse action for raising psychosocial health and safety complaints about Sandilands. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC both report ARN terminated Henderson's contract first due to her inability to work with Sandilands, but The Guardian specifies her complaint letter was dated February 20, 2026, future date, while ABC and others confirm the incident was February 20, 2024. ABC states Sandilands has not spoken to Henderson since his suspension, but Sandilands himself told reporters, per The Age SMH, that she understands and they've had blow-ups before, implying contact. The Guardian claims Arn's ASX filing stated Henderson's termination was linked to her exercise of workplace rights under the Fair Work Act, but ABC and SMH do not mention this specific legal angle. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. AFL introduces new stringent illicit drug policy for players with hair testing and harm reduction focus. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The AFL and AFLW players will now undergo hair testing for illicit drugs twice per year under a new policy announced in 2024. The new policy replaces the previous 3 strikes model and is described as the most stringent illicit drugs policy in Australian sport by AFL CEO Andrew Dillon. Players who test positive 3 or more times will be assessed by a newly formed joint IDP committee, which includes club representatives and independent experts. The AFL confirmed the policy will cost more than the previous one but will be fully funded by the AFL itself. Players barred from playing under the policy will continue to be paid by their clubs. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the new policy features a suspension range of 2 to 4 matches for public use of illicit drugs, but The Guardian does not mention this specific suspension detail. ABC emphasises the policy's stepped process with clear escalation, behaviour change programme, individual management plan, fitness of play assessment, while The Guardian focuses more on confidentiality and potential fines for breaches. The Guardian highlights the AFL's expectation of an increase in positive tests due to hair testing, but ABC does not explicitly mention this expectation. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian PM Anthony Albanese delivers a rare national address amid Middle East conflict and economic fallout. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese addressed the nation on Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, via live broadcast across all TV and radio networks simultaneously. The address was prompted by the war in the Middle East and its economic fallout, specifically urging Australians to save fuel for critical areas and industries. National addresses by Australian PMs are rare and typically occur during major crises such as wars, pandemics, or historic First Nations moments. Scott Morrison last delivered a national address in March 2020 to inform Australians about the COVID-19 pandemic. John Cuttin's 1941 speech announcing Australia's entry into World War II is commonly regarded as the first national address of its kind. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian does not mention the historical debate over whether Robert Menzies or John Cuttin delivered the first national address, while ABC explicitly states Cuttin's 1941 speech was likely preceded by Menzies. The Guardian does not speculate on whether Albanese will announce fuel rationing, while ABC states he is unlikely to announce fuel rationing at this stage. The Guardian does not provide specific historical quotes from past addresses, while ABC includes direct quotes from Cuttin, Fraser, Keating, and Rudd. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian study links vaping to lung and oral cancer risk. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A new review led by researchers from the University of New South Wales, UNSW, found nicotine-containing vapes are likely to cause lung and oral cancers, based on evidence from 2017 to 2025. The review analysed mouse studies, human biomarker studies, oxidative stress, epigenetic changes, inflammation, and case reports, including a 19-year-old man with oral cancer linked to vaping. Australia's federal government in 2024 restricted vape sales to pharmacies for smoking cessation or nicotine dependence management only. Black market vapes in Australia often contain nicotine despite misleading labels, according to Alexander Larcombe, Curtin University, and ABC's reporting. The review did not establish a definitive epidemiological link between vaping and cancer but identified biological markers, DNA damage, inflammation, associated with cancer risk. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reported Dr. Stewart said there is still no epidemiological link between vaping and cancer, while The Guardian framed the review as finding likely cancer risk without definitive numbers. The Guardian quoted Professor Stephen Duffy as saying vaping is not as harmful as smoking due to absence of combustion products, but ABC's Alexander Larcombe stated nothing inhaled into the lungs other than fresh air is likely to be completely okay. ABC emphasized Dr. Stewart's caution that vaping as a smoking cessation tool is not established as successful, while The Guardian's Freddie Seeters implied regulators should act despite inconclusive quit vaping evidence. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US court rulings hold Meta and Google liable for social media addiction and harm to minors. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A California jury ordered Meta to pay $375 million in damages in a New Mexico case over claims Meta enabled child sexual exploitation and misled users about platform safety. Guardian, ABC, SBS, Guardian editorial. A California jury found Meta and YouTube liable for negligence and awarded $6 million in damages to a 20-year-old plaintiff, KGM, who alleged addiction to YouTube and Instagram caused mental health harm. Guardian, Newscomiu, ABC, SBS, Guardian. The California jury split damages 70% to Meta and 30% to YouTube, with Meta liable for $4.2 million and YouTube for $1.8 million. Guardian, ABC, Guardian. The plaintiff, KGM, testified she began using YouTube at age 6 and Instagram at age 9, and developed depression, self-harm, body dysmorphic disorder, and social phobia by age 13. Guardian, ABC, Guardian, Guardian. Jurors in the California case found Meta and YouTube acted with malice, oppression, or fraud, setting the stage for punitive damages. Guardian, Newscomiu, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC report the plaintiff was awarded $6 million in damages, while Newscomiu states the award was $3 million, with $4.3 million including punitive damages. The Guardian and ABC report the plaintiff was awarded $4.2 million from Meta and $1.8 million from YouTube, while Newscomiu states Meta was liable for $2.1 million and YouTube for $900,000. The Guardian reports the California jury deliberated for 44 hours, while ABC does not mention the duration of deliberations. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nepal's former PM KP Sharma Oli arrested over alleged role in deadly protest crackdown. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. KP Sharma Oli, 74, and ex-Home Minister Ramesh Lekak were arrested on Saturday over alleged roles in the September 2023 protest crackdown that killed protesters. The arrests occurred in Kathmandu at their residences, with Oli later taken to a hospital due to kidney issues. At least 19 protesters died when police opened fire during the Gen Z protests in September 2023, with additional deaths, totaling 74 to 76, from nationwide unrest after government offices were set ablaze. The arrests followed a leaked government investigation report recommending 10 years in prison for Oli, Lekak, and the former police chief for negligence in the crackdown. New Prime Minister Balendra Shah, Rastriya Swatantra Party, was sworn in Friday, campaigning on justice for the protest deaths and corruption crackdowns. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports 19 deaths from police firing and additional deaths from burning government offices, total unspecified, while ABC states 76 deaths total from the crackdown. The Guardian claims the investigation report stated no order to shoot was established, but ABC does not mention this specific detail. ABC reports Oli's supporters burned tyres and clashed with police, injuring one person, while SBS and Guardian do not mention protests or injuries. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.